The Doobie Brothers, what a fool believes. Now, we're talking about parking fines this morning, and we've got some great advice in a moment about what you can do if you get a parking fine. These days, lots of car parks, they've got cameras that log exactly when you arrive and when you leave. And often you need to tap in your reg plate into a machine. And one man has told us he's willing to go to court to fight a parking ticket he received while on holiday in Lincolnshire. Glenn Orra from Sheffield said Euro Car Parks was failing to show common sense after he received a penalty charge notice, that's a PCN, despite paying for a ticket whilst visiting Louth. But Glenn says he won't pay, and he's been speaking to Jessica Lane.
This is the notice that Euro Car Park sent to me. Entry time, 10:54, 42 seconds. Exit time, 12:55 and 37 seconds. Time in car park, 2 hours, 1 minute, Eastgate, Louth. No valid pay and display payment was purchased. My ticket states there, 12:56, which is 20-something seconds, I think it is, inside the timescale. So I have a valid ticket for the timings that they're saying that I haven't got a ticket for.
Glenn appealed the fine with Euro Car Parks. He then had a letter telling him he'd put the incorrect car registration into the machine when he bought his ticket, and only the last 3 letters of the number plate were there.
Plain common sense should prevail in this because it's ridiculous. In my terms anyway, because I have a ticket there which says, obviously on the end of it, WFX, which relates to my car. I know I've paid money. I'm prepared to take it to court because I'm not wrong. I've paid. I've already paid.
Glenn's appealing this too through an independent company. Glenn had been on holiday in Lincolnshire, but many who live in Louth say they know someone who's had trouble at Eastgate Car Park.
So what do you know about the Eastgate Car Park?
Well, you drive in there and drive out and they give you a ticket. Even you just got to turn around, don't they?
Do you ever use it at all?
No.
Is there a reason you don't use it?
Because people keep getting fined.
Does that stop you from using it?
Yes, it does.
Very bad right there. Pretty much everyone in Louth knows not to even turn in there now.
For Bev, her battle with Euro Car Parks took nearly 2 years to get sorted.
I parked in there and tried to pay, but the machines weren't working. I sent a picture of a little note I'd left in my car saying apologies, but if you call, here's the money, and I left it on my dashboard.
You left the money?
I left the money on the dashboard to prove that I was willing to pay on that day. The letters get quite scary.
Euro Car Parks has been approached for comment.
Well, let's talk to motoring disputes expert Scott Dixon, otherwise known as the complaints resolver. Good morning, Scott.
Good morning, Sarah Jane. Thank you for having me on about this.
Thank you so much for joining us. Now, it's not just this car park in Louth, but many people have had issues with these penalty charge notices. And they normally just say you owe an amount, and if you don't pay within a certain time frame, then it's going to go up later. But what are the rules for this sort of thing?
Well, the first thing to remember, Sarah Jane, is that it's not a fine. It's simply an invoice for an alleged breach of contract for parking on private land. And parking operators, the issue invoices called parking charge notices, whereas councils issue fines called penalty charge notices. And they look the same, and there's a reason for that. And it's estimated that 4 in 5 are paid without question to take advantage of the discount, regardless of whether it's been issued fairly or not, as people think they've been fined. But it's simply an invoice for an alleged breach of contract for parking on private land, and it's clearly profitable. And I was at the ParkX trade conference in Coventry last week, and this is the trade conference for the private parking sector, and the scale of it is unbelievable. And this unregulated industry is worth an estimated £1.5 billion a year.
Wow. I mean, and obviously there is a distinction. I was going to say that to you because, if the council gives you a parking ticket, you've got to pay that, right? But if it's a parking charge notice, what are the rules for paying those?
Well, the easiest way to cancel it, and most people don't know about this, is to speak to the landowner. So try and bypass the parking operator in the first place. So, for example, if you're at a supermarket like Morrison's or Lidl, there's other supermarkets available, shopping centres, speak to the speak to them directly, customer services, and they will often cancel them, take a shopping receipt as proof of loyalty and goodwill. Be nice about it, but always get written confirmation at the time if they say they will do so. And that's the easiest way to cancel. And that also applies for GP surgeries. So speak to the practice manager if you get a private parking ticket at a GP surgery car park. And at hospitals, speak to PALS. And that's the acronym for Patient Advice Liaison Service. And they will happily cancel them as well.
So there are people that you can go to, but it's not clear, is it? You don't, you literally get the letter and it just says you've got to pay this fine now, otherwise we're going to double it. So what can you do? Do you have to pay it?
You don't have to pay it, but equally you can't ignore it. So,
right.
Yeah, good. It's all about the evidence, Sarah Jane. So take photos of any signs, proof of payment, if applicable, screenshots of maybe error messages if you've tried to pay by app and it's failed, witness statements, app confirmations, text messages, dash cam footage. The list is endless. Google location tracker on your phone. And Google Street View, you can use that to scope the car park if you can't get to the car park. You've been on a day trip or on holiday. Yeah. You can use Google Street View to scope the car park and zoom in on signs that may be confusing or not positioned clearly to evidence your case.
Oh, that's really clever. But what about if you make a mistake, you put in the wrong reg plate? I know, on my reg plate, it's got an X, a K and a Y in it, and that just sends me into dyslexia mode. So what happens if you make a mistake, it's an honest mistake, you've paid for your space, but you've put in the wrong reg plate? Do you have any rights?
You do, and this is covered in what's called the single code of practice that's been written by the trade associations for the parking operators to adhere to, but you won't be surprised to hear that more often than not they don't. So there's two types of keying errors. So you've got what's called a minor keying error, which is what you've just referred to there, and that's like, for example, inputting a 0 instead of the letter O. Yeah. And these should be cancelled on the first stage, appeal, free of charge, in line with the single code of practice, although the majority are not. And a major keying error is inputting the wrong registration entirely. So apps on your phone, they often default to old registration numbers that have been saved, for example. Yeah. And in that case, you should be offered the opportunity to pay £20 to cover their admin fees. But don't be intimidated into paying it to take advantage of the discount and things like that, because you haven't been fined. It's simply an invoice for an alleged breach of contract for parking on private land. So follow the appeals process, but don't be intimidated or worried if it fails on the first and second stage, because only a court can enforce payment. And you can safely ignore any third-party debt collectors demanding £170 because they have no powers whatsoever to enforce an alleged debt owed to a parking operator. The only letter that needs a response is a letter before claim or court papers, and only a court can enforce payment, and that's if you don't respond to a letter before claim or court papers and the parking firm gets a default CCJ.
It's terrifying, though, isn't it? It's terrifying getting those sorts of letters. And, if you're thinking, I'm just about to apply for a mortgage, and then you get a debt collector's letter, you'd instantly think, well, that's going to go on my record, that's going to ruin my credit, I'm just going to pay it. You just panic, don't you?
You do. Yeah, it's easy to panic. But equally, many cases are just dropped when a robust defence is lodged. And parking firms play the percentages game, knowing that most people, 4 out of 5, pay without question on receipt of the first invoice because they think they've been fined. And it's just a percentages game. But if you take it to the second stage for POPLA, which is the acronym for Parking on Appeals Private Land, that's the second stage for Euro car parks. Over 50% are upheld in favour of the motorists, and 1 in 3 are not contested by the parking operator.
Wow. So is it always worth questioning a penalty charge that you get in a car park? I mean, obviously, if you've simply just not paid, then no. But if you've got a case.
Yeah, definitely. If you feel that you've been treated unfairly, stick to your guns on it, and just remember, keep in your mind that it's just an invoice for an alleged breach of contract. It's not a fine. Only councils issue fines, and stick to your guns and let a judge decide. because on the balance of probabilities, the parking operator has to prove their case in court and let a judge decide if all else fails. And I think we need to be more militant on it, Sarah Jane, because it's an unfair playing field that motorists are dealing with.
It is unfair. Scott, is there a website that you can direct our listeners to where they can see some of their rights, or do they just have to search it up?
Well, there's plenty of information online, but my website, all the W's, thecomplainsresolver.co.uk, there's plenty of information on my website. And there are other websites available, but don't be intimidated and as I say, the third-party debt collector letters, you can safely ignore those, but a letter before claim is the final stop before it goes to court. That needs a response, but you can ignore the what I've referred to as begging letters, demanding £170, because they don't have any powers whatsoever to enforce any alleged debts owed to third-party private parking operators.
Scott, you've been amazingly helpful this morning. Thank you so much for your time. You're the complaintsresolver.co.uk. You take care. So that was so interesting, wasn't it, from Scott? There's the Poplar Parking on Appeals Private Land. That's where you can take your appeals to, and it's always worth appealing. And there is a difference between a penalty charge notice, which is from the council, and a parking charge notice, which is from a private operator.